Okay, let's really unpack this. Leadership. At its heart, it really just boils down to language.
It really does. How we frame things, the questions we ask, even how we listen.
Exactly. These are the actual tools, right? The tools of influence. So today, we're diving deep into L. David Marquet's Leadership is Language.
Yeah, and it's not just picking the right words. It's more fundamental.
It's about rethinking how we connect, how we, inspire our teams.
And what's so interesting here, I think, is this core idea that so much of what happens, successes, failures, it's tied so deeply to communication. Marquet really makes a compelling case that even, subtle shifts in how we talk can unlock huge potential.
And to make this really concrete, let's talk about that incredibly tragic story of the cargo ship El Faro.
Oh yeah, October 2015, sank in a hurricane.
Right. Warnings were clear. The captain was experienced a decade, I think, but the ship, tragically, was lost, all 33 crew members.
And it wasn't about qualifications lacking. That's the haunting part.
So what went wrong? What were the factors there?
Well, the investigations really point to this imbalance in leadership. A very traditional command structure.
Heavy on action, orders.
Exactly. Heavy on immediate action, follow the orders. But it seems like that crowded out the space for reflection, for real dialogue.
Yeah, and that really brings us to the core question for this deep dive, doesn't it? Could different language, a different leadership style have changed things for El Faro?
It's a tough question, but a vital one.
And maybe more importantly for you listening, how can understanding this help any team? That's our mission today, really, to pull out those key insights from Marquet and see how they apply, practically.
And Marquet himself, his background is key here. He was a submarine captain.
Right, on the USS Santa Fe.
Yeah, and he saw firsthand the limits of that command and control model. He realized, a different approach wasn't just nice to have, it was essential for effectiveness.
Okay, so let's get into his core concept. He talks about two modes in all human work.
That's right. Thinking and doing. Analyzing, understand the world. That's one mode.
And then the other is taking action based on that understanding.
He calls them blue work and red work. Thinking is blue, doing is red. And success, he argues, lies in balancing them.
Finding that equilibrium.
Precisely. But the tendency, especially under pressure, deadlines.
We lean into the doing, the red work.
Yeah, we overemphasize the execution, the grind. Sometimes even when, deep down, something feels off about the plan.
We just push through.
We push through. And that's a really critical lens for looking at the El Faro disaster.
Absolutely, because when you look at those, the transcripts from the final hours,
It's chilling.
the captain's communication, sometimes it seems hesitant or ambiguous, and ultimately it feels like it closed off input.
Yeah, over 25 hours, you mentioned. Over 1,000 statements, 165 questions.
But how many really invited input, real concern?
Very few, it seems. The linguistic analysis is quite revealing.
Like those phrases, we're going into the storm, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right. That sounds decisive, maybe, but it effectively slams the door on alternatives, doesn't it?
Totally. Or even something like, does that make sense?
Which sounds like a question, but often it's just rhetorical.
Yep.
It signals the end of discussion, not the start.
And this is where that blue work and red work framework really helps. Blue work, that's the thinking, the debating, the strategy part.
The cognitive lifting.
Yeah. And red work is the execution, doing the thing.
And what seems missing on El Faro is that deliberate pause for blue work. That collective step back to say, hang on, the storm's intensifying. Should we rethink this?
It just wasn't there.
And it's amazing how just a small shift in phrasing might have changed the dynamic.
Instead of say, are you sure?
Right. What if it was, how sure are we about this route? See the difference?
Yeah, it opens things up. It says uncertainty is okay, let's talk about our confidence level.
It invites curiosity, invites thinking. It doesn't demand compliance.
Exactly. And Marquet really hammers this point. You have to create psychological safety, an environment where different opinions aren't just tolerated, they're actively sought out.
That's the fertile ground for blue work, isn't it? Where you tap into everyone's brain power. not just the leaders.
And this ties into emotions at work, which we sometimes, try to ignore.
We do, but leaders have a huge responsibility for the team's emotional health.
Yeah.
Just telling people, speak up, doesn't work.
Not if your actions don't back it up.
Exactly. If people don't feel safe, they won't speak up. On El Faro, that hierarchy, it clearly played a role. Junior crew might have seen things, but felt unable to voice them.
So, psychological safety. It really means feeling sure you won't get shot down or embarrassed for sharing an idea, even a dissenting one.
That's the core of it. That's where blue work happens.
And Marquet gives a really practical tip here. Before big decisions.
The anonymous writing.
Yeah. Everyone writes down their thoughts, concerns, ideas anonymously. Then you review them together.
It levels the playing field. Gives a voice to the quieter people, maybe surfaces things no one wanted to say out loud first.
It's a simple but powerful technique.
And what's really key to get is that dissent. It isn't disharmony. It's actually fuel for innovation, for making better choices.
So leaders need to invite it.
Actively. Ask things like, what am I missing here? Or what haven't we considered?
Those kinds of questions signal openness. They build trust. Shows you actually value their perspective.
Yeah. And another interesting thing he talks about is overclaiming.
Where we all think we contribute more or know more than we actually do.
Sort of, yeah. And quick group votes can actually make this worse, especially if the leader weighs in first. People tend to conform.
Okay, so what's the fix?
His idea is a bit counterintuitive. Vote before you discuss.
Really?
Anonymous polls, maybe? Or just have everyone share their initial take briefly, one by one, before the big debate starts.
So you preserve that initial range of opinions.
Exactly. You avoid everyone just jumping on the first bandwagon. It leads to a richer exploration.
It's fascinating when you think about the brain itself. Marquet points out it uses, 25% of our daily calories?
Just for thinking. Biology values thinking very highly.
So why are we often so reluctant to dedicate real time to it at work?
Good question. It leads right into his idea of timeouts.
Deliberate pauses.
Yeah, conscious pauses. Stepping back from the red work when something feels off or uncertain to do some blue work.
Like in agile teams with their sprints.
Exactly. Those sprints often have built-in moments for review and reflection. It's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter.
And part of working smarter is how we view mistakes.
Huge point. Marquet says reframe them. They're not failures, they're learning opportunities.
But if people are afraid of being wrong...
They shut down. They won't challenge things. So leaders have to dismantle that fear.
Oh.
One way is controlling the clock, as he calls it. Pause when something unexpected happens. Don't just react, analyze, learn.
And celebrate small completions.
Yes. So those become natural points for reflection. Okay, we finished that part. What did we learn before we jump into the next?
It reminds me of that story about Disney's Frozen.
Oh yeah, the creative process there was apparently quite messy. Lots of blue work.
Revisions, rethinking, they had to embrace the messiness, right?
Totally. It takes patience. It takes a get better mindset, not a be good ego that can't admit flaws or needs to change course.
That connects to another distinction he makes. Compliance versus commitment.
Right. Simple tasks, maybe compliance is enough. Follow the rules.
But complex goals, big challenges.
You need commitment, real commitment. And that comes from choice, from feeling ownership.
So how do you foster that? Marquet has steps.
Right. 3 main ones. Commit to learning, not just doing. Focus on concrete actions, not vague intentions. And break the work into small chunks.
Manageable pieces.
Yeah. And use commitment statements. Like, okay, here's what I'll do next, and here's when we'll pause to see how it went.
Clear action, clear reflection point.
Sets up that cycle.
And don't forget to celebrate finishing those red work phases.
Crucial. Not just a pat on the back, but genuine appreciation. It creates that psychological space to reset before the next push.
And focus on behaviors, not traits.
Yes. I appreciated how you tackled X, not just you're smart. It's more specific, more impactful.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. The core message of leadership is language.
It's that leadership isn't just orders from the top. It's in the quality of the conversation.
It's language that invites, questions that spark thought.
Pauses that empower learning and adaptation.
And the El Faro tragedy stands as this just heartbreaking example of what happens when that's missing.
Absolutely. A failure of language in many ways.
You just imagine, what if the captain had asked, "What are you seeing that I'm not?"
Or paused to really reassess the route collectively, if dissenting views were genuinely heard.
The outcome might have been entirely different.
And these ideas, they aren't just for ships, they apply everywhere.
Any team facing complexity.
Any industry, any challenge. Balancing thinking and doing, creating safety, using language consciously. It's universal.
So for you listening, what are some things you could do, like tomorrow?
Talk openly about goals? Sure, but also about challenges. Actively ask for concerns.
Maybe set up that anonymous suggestion channel.
Great idea. Or try rotating who leads meetings. Give junior members a chance to get fresh perspectives.
And just practice active listening. Really hear what people are saying.
Fundamentally, this deep dive shows the incredible power in our words, our questions.
Yeah, being more aware of our language can genuinely transform how teams work. Make them not just compliant, but committed.
Where mistakes become learning points, and you harness everyone's intelligence for better results.
So as you go about your day, maybe just pay a bit more attention to your own language, the words you use, the questions you ask.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you. How might intentionally shifting your language, even subtly, unlock potential you haven't even seen yet in your teams, your relationships, maybe even in yourself?
Something to explore.